Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made this HGUC RGM Quel in this display base. So let's get started. Confession, I already started it. It was originally intended for the SCGMC theme for 2022, but I didn't make it in time, so I shelved it. Moving on, the first thing I want to do is extend the legs, arms, and waist. So starting with the thighs, I'm going to cut them in the middle. I'm making a rough guide with the Sharpie. I'm using my razor saw and miter box to cut a straight line. For the arms, I'm cutting the upper part, but I need to cut both the exterior and the inner frame part. I'm making a mark on one side so that I'll remember which pieces go together. Same for the leg armor. Now I'm cutting some plastic sheet to add a couple millimeters of height. Once the cement is set, I trim the plastic. I've also extended the waist, but I need to cut a hole in the plastic to attach it to the torso. Starting by drilling these holes and finishing it off with this electric router. I also need to do the same things to the arm parts. And sand all of those pieces smooth. And a coat of primer to check for imperfections. Which, as you can see here, there are a lot. I'll need to fix before I move on. You can see it's pretty bad. I'm going to fill in some of these gaps with light curing putty. Because the light hardens it, I need to turn it off for this part. And after about 5 minutes, I can sand it. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to add some details with scrap styrene. I'm also going to add some detail by scribing. Like most high grades, the skirt armor has hollow backs, so I'm covering it with sheet styrene. You can also fill it with epoxy putty but I find this technique easier. You glue it on and just trim the edges. I'm digging through my spare photo etch stash so I can add some extra detail. Most of this is just leftover from other kits that I've built over the years. The shield can be attached to both the side and the back of the arm, but I'm never going to attach a shield to the back, so I'm going to trim these tabs off. Instead of sanding this seam line smooth, I'm going to scribe a panel line in its place just to add a little more interest. The rifle is in 2 halves, so it needs a little seam filling. I'm using this blue for a bit of detail behind the visor. I've already painted the part with Gaia EX Silver. Because I'm using so little paint, I'm just sticking the brush into the bottle spout. Because the visor is a yellow color, it should look kind of greenish. And I'm continuing to add more detail to panels. I want to add some little indentations to the forearms. So I'm going to use my Tamiya electric handy drill. I'm marking the spots with my tweezers. Just give it a little drill so that it doesn't go all the way through. These calipers will help me figure out the exact distance for the other side. The back of the shield has some pin marks in hard to get to places that makes it difficult to sand. I'm going to hide them with photo etch. And a couple spare photo etch parts for the feet. Next, I need to replace these poor excuses for power cables. I'm using these braided lines, which is meant for car models. First thing I need to do is cut off the molded plastic. I eventually realized it's easier and probably safer to sand it down with a rough sanding stick. Once the surface is flat, I'm marking where I need to drill holes to fit the metal wire. The lower legs have some seams that need filling. The arms have a few seams. As well as the shoulders on the torso. And I've also puttied the holes where the cables attach. I need to prime some of the parts, including the head, to check my sanding, so I'm putting some liquid masking fluid on the visor to protect it. Since the cables are metal, I'm using Mr. Metal Primer for these parts. For the main colors, I'm using Mr. Color, Gundam Color, Titan's Blue 1 and 2. For yellow, I'm using Mr. Color number 58. For the red, I'm going to mix a shade using these two colors. The rifle is a lighter gray color that I didn't mention. I'm doing a modulation paint job on this kit, which you can kind of see here. Notice the slider at the top. Now that the upper arm is painted, I can start gluing the arm parts together. I need to mask off some of the parts that I painted dark gray. It's time to fill some seams in the upper arm and the forearm, but I need to protect the parts that I've already painted, so I'm taping it up. As I mentioned earlier, I'm doing a modulation paint job on this kit, and here's another example on the foot. I've also masked off some of the areas that I need to add shading to. For the dark gray parts, I'm going to add a little light gray for the modulation highlights. These are the parts that need to be painted red. Now that they're painted, I need to mask off this little yellow V, as well as some vents that are on the shoulders. Here are the thruster nozzles after painting the inside red. To mask the inside, I'm sticking it onto some tape to paint the outside. Now that I've painted the rest of the arms, I can finally move on to the shoulder armor, which is the last bit of seam work. The parts have a little indentation that has a seam, but I'm going to add some mesh detail to cover it. The guns on the head need to be yellow, but it's easiest to paint them by hand. I'm also painting the black inside the vents on the sides of the head, and the black trim around the red nozzles on the backpack. Painting the power cables in gray. And now that everything's painted, I'm applying Tamiya's panel line wash. These are the kit stickers. I hate stickers, so I recreated them with Adobe Illustrator and asked my friend to print them as waterslide decals. I'm also going to be applying some random decals from my spares. Here's the kit after all the decals are applied. You can see I've added small warning labels throughout. I've also added a couple to the rifle. Now I'm going to start weathering with some paint chipping. I'm using Vallejo German Camo Black Brown. I'm using a small brush and adding scratch marks and chips in random areas. I've added some brown chips to the rifle, but I'm also adding some light gray chips that will pop a little more. Fast forward, and here's where I'm at so far. I've added some light blue around the chips as well, but I'm not satisfied, so I'm going to keep going. There are some parts that need to be a metallic green. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint them with chrome silver paint. And once that's cured, I'm going over it with, to me, a clear green. Next is a little more weathering using AK weathering pencils. If you've never used them before, they're basically watercolor pencils, but they're softer than the artist types, so they stick better to the model surface. You basically just scribble it on wherever you like and smooth it out with a soft brush and water. Repeat the process until you get the look you want. After using the pencils, I still felt it was a little too subtle, so I'm going to do more weathering with oils. Before using them on the model, you need to leach out some of the oil by putting some on cardboard. After a few hours, you'll notice how the oil has been sucked out of the paint. This will make it easier to use on the model surface and dry faster. I'm applying it in small spots and blending with a soft brush and mineral spirits. Because oils dry so slowly, you have a lot of working time to make adjustments. That was the last step on the mobile suit, so now I'm going to switch to the base, starting with cutting out the runway surface. I'm using sheet styrene and cutting with normal scissors. Here it is after it's cut, so you can see how it's going to fit. But first I need to paint the wood. Normally I would use artist acrylics, but I can't seem to find my black, so I'm going to use Vallejo black. I've taped the styrene to my painting stand and I'm planning out what I want to do with it. After priming it, the first thing I want to do is scribe some lines to replicate concrete expansion joints. I'm using Vallejo paints for the base, starting with this gray. It's airbrush ready, so I just squirt it into my paint cup. Now I'm using some black to add some texture. And now a lighter gray to blend everything together. The surface is still kind of plain, so I'm going to add some line markings. As you can see, I've painted some lines with Tamiya yellow. And now I'm going to add some white lines to add a little more interest. I sprayed a little too wet and it bled underneath the tape, but since I'm going to weather the surface, it's not a big deal in this case. So I kind of got carried away and didn't film how I painted all of this, but I'm going to reenact it. Basically, I'm using these post-it notes as quick masks. Stick a couple on to create corners and spray a lighter color here. Repeat in a different spot. Spray a darker color there. Repeat again until you're satisfied. Now I'm going to add some enamel washes. I'm putting a wash over the whole surface. Eventually I got smarter and switched to a larger brush. Now I'm adding some splatters to recreate liquid spills. I feel like I added too much, so I'm removing some with enamel thinner. Once I finished this step, I sprayed it with some gloss Mr. Super Clear so I can add some decals. But I didn't wait long enough for the enamel to cure and the surface crackled. Luckily it's small and almost to scale for a cracked concrete surface, so it's okay in this case. Now I'm adding a few random decals from my spares. This is with all the decals on and the numbers are still wet. These figures are architectural figures in 1/160 scale, which is close enough to 1/144 to be interchangeable. I'm painting them in Titan's uniform colors based on the internet reference with a number 10/0 brush. These are some storage containers that I downloaded and 3D printed. I'll put a link to where I got them in the description. I've painted one in Titan's blue and the others in Federation tan, and I'm adding some decals. After a clear coat, I'm giving them a wash and a little weathering. I'm attaching the plastic to the wooden base using some slow drying CA glue. This will give me a little time to make sure it's centered. All that's left is to attach everything to the base using quick drying CA glue. And here's the final base. I'll leave the mobile suit unattached. It'll stand freely on top so that I can move it around if I need to. It's been a couple years since I built a Gundam model, but I had a lot of fun with this one. Even though it's small, I was able to add enough detail to keep it interesting. I hope you enjoyed this build, maybe learned a thing or two. And as always, thanks for watching.